The management of a Chinese firm, Zongshan Funcheng Industrial Investment Company Limited, has said its top officials were unlawfully detained and brutalized by the police during its contractual disagreement with the Ogun State government. The firm said the maltreatment compelled it to seek the seizure of the Nigerian assets overseas. The media was awash on Thursday with the news of the seizure of the three of Nigeria's presidential jets as ordered by a French court. Two of the seized jets, a Dassault Falcon and a Boeing 737, are part of Nigeria's presidential air fleet, recently put up for sale, and the third is an Airbus 330 purchased by Nigeria but not yet delivered. The planes, which were undergoing routine maintenance, were seized following an ex parte order issued by the Judicial Court of Paris on March 7th and August 12th, 2024. The seizure came after litigations were initiated by the Chinese company against the federal government of Nigeria and the Ogun State government due to termination of a contractual agreement. An arbitral tribunal subsequently awarded Zongshan about $74.5 million in compensation, but the state government did not honor the ruling. The company then sought the intervention of the French courts, which ordered the seizure of the federal government's jets, including the Dassault Falcon and a Boeing and an Airbus 330. The Nigerian government reportedly paid over $100 million for that Airbus. All right, so I have on the line this morning two individuals to help me do a little bit of justice to the headlines to this particular conversation. I have Agaba Wilson Agaba, who is a business financial consultant and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Agaba Wilson. Good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Desiree.
All right. So we have this seized federal government's jet. What do you make of this story in the first place?
Well, it's still about the way we get things done in this country, the quick fix attitude of politicians in power. I was talking with a friend recently, and he told me we raised issue about how Nigeria raises loans from international financial organizations
Hmm.
and institutions. And we were complaining whether our people actually look in detail into the terms and conditions of some of these loans before they take it. And he told me about a friend of his who once worked with the IMF. And he said that each time he goes to a European country or Asia and all of that to negotiate loan, it always takes them a lot of time that they bring out their best people. They look at the fine print of each agreement. They will point out this. They will tell you that this is not acceptable. This must be adjusted. At the end of the day, they will drill them. And eventually, they will get a good loan with good condition for their country. But at any time he's coming to Africa, it's almost like he's going on a holiday. Because when he comes to Africa, they draft and they give the leaders, and the leaders just sign. So and when he comes back home here, you find our people don't understand that government is supposed to be a continuum. It is your administration, but that's the role you are playing in the overall long-term plan. You see, we don't have a 50-year plan. We don't have a 100-year plan. We don't even have a 20-year plan. You see, that is even the reason you see that political parties don't have ideology. Because the ideology is supposed to be about, okay, we want to go from point A to point Z. Then political parties will say, okay, this is how I think is best for us to get there. And political party B will say, no, I disagree. This is how I think it is best for us to get there faster. That becomes ideology. And everything rallies around it. But what we are doing here is in shambles. So when you get a governor in the seat, what they want to do is to get what they call quick wins. Because at the end of the day, the people will ask them, what did you do? What did you do? And you hear them talking about PPPA, private, public-private partnership agreement. They are shouting it all the time. Have you looked at it? Is this thing workable? Is it sustainable for the long term? They don't do all these things. But as long as the partner is going to bring in a few $1 million and that maybe they can use to support their luxurious life or create the fanfare of I have started something, that's just it. And then you see that when the next administration comes, whether this thing is working fine or it needs tweaking to make it work fine and all of that, nobody cares because if the opposition wins, it's like they are enemies. So, and I have to come at you with my personal issues. So everything you did before, I will undo them without thinking about the implication. So you now see something done by a state. Sometimes they go now rubbing off on the federal government because, of course, before any of these states gets into this kind of agreement, the federal government sort of
Must be
approves it.
involved.
So, of course, what you are seeing today is a symptom of the kind of home we have built. By home here, I mean our government at all the tiers.
All right. I have Mr. Larry here. Mr. Larry is the founder and coordinator of Human Rights Volunteer Corps, better known as HRVC. He's a human capacity development consultant and social reformer. Welcome, Mr. Larry.
Thank you, Gerson. Good morning. And good morning, my friend. That has been doing wonderful analysis.
Good morning, Mr. Larry.
All right, so we're talking about this issue of the jet seizure. First of all, I just want to, real quick, I just want to get your take on it, because there's been a lot of conversation back and forth, especially between the party Tomi, who came out to talk about some issues that he experienced with the Ogun State government as well, and between the party Tomi and Anibikunle Amosun on this particular issue, talking about getting contracts, the process of it in Ogun State. So what's your take on it, Mr. Larry?
In the first place, I must say that on a general note, our political elites do not have a culture of respecting contracts, on a general note. But then some of them are worse than others. I mean, a lot of them don't even respect court orders. So a person who doesn't respect a court order, simple, straightforward court order, how can the person have respect for contracts? And this matter was aggravated by this immunity conferred on governors by the Constitution. It has been thoroughly abused over time. And it's one thing we must review as a country. We may not necessarily remove the entire immunity, but there should be circumstances under which the governor should be held accountable immediately, not later. And having said that, I think what has happened is that there's been no consequences for this kind of behavior. These governors not only flout contracts and court orders, even without any consequences while they're in office. There should be consequences after they leave office, assuming we have not been able to deal with the immunity clause. But we have a very short memory here. It's only EFCC that probably will go after the person, and then after some drama, the person will still be either left off the hook or the matter is pending, except in few cases of persons who, in my opinion, fell out of favor politically. I think what we need to do, like my colleague and the analyst already said, is that we must establish a clear terms of reference for managing contracts, whether they are local or foreign, especially foreign contracts and loans. Some of these things have been done, but they are not respected. We have a foreign debt office. But the question is, how do these institutions function? And then the second question is, are these people held accountable when things go sour? For instance, now we have our assets seized. Are we asking questions about who for instance, breached the contract, who drafted it, are there loopholes, and all of that. How the federal government assent to that transaction, because invariably you cannot, as a subnational, go and engage in foreign contracts and foreign loans without the federal government's approval. So are they really conscious of the implications of what they do? Do they do due diligence before they get involved in these transactions? Most of the time, the answer is no. Largely, these decisions are taken on the basis of what personal benefits or corporate benefits they get or their friends and colleagues get. And until we begin to hold people accountable for breaching extant rules, that is standard best practices for doing things, we are not going to make progress. I'll give an example that is not related to this, but it's just an analogy. In Nigeria, ever so often, properties are demolished in Abuja and elsewhere for non-compliance with regulatory approvals or for being sited at the wrong place. But these properties very often are approved, and the owners shout from the rooftop, "We have approvals." But what I see in Nigeria is that the government will go ahead and demolish the property and refuse to pay the owner compensation because, according to them, it was built on a floodplain or something. But they do not punish the civil servant who collected money, bribe, if you want to put it bluntly, and approved that structure. And I've been saying it for decades. Until we punish the civil servants who compromise and approve those structures and give this other person the impression that nothing will happen, just go and build, we won't stop the cycle, because we demolish today, another person will go and give bribe and build there tomorrow. And that's what we are passing through. We have become a nation of people who are not just disciplined. And unfortunately, the leaders who are supposed to enforce discipline are actually teaching the rest of us how not to be disciplined. And that is the problem. Sorry, right. Another small digression. Yesterday, we were waiting patiently for the traffic light to change from red to green, and a police van leisurely drove that past all of us and breached. I was so angry. I had to start hooting and flashing at them. In fact, eventually I caught up with them and asked them, "Is that how you people do your policing?" They started calling me all kinds of curse names. They pass traffic lights. They are showing bad example. But guess what? If you pass the same traffic light, they'll start pursuing you. And all of these small bad examples add up to a nation that is totally lawless. Utterly lawless from top to bottom. The few of us who insist on doing things according to the law are seen as stupid, or that they don't understand the country in which they operate. So if we want to apply these things to the issue at hand, you find out that it's the same small culture of disrespecting procedures and allowing people to get away with infractions that has brought us here. And Nigeria will pay, because this is not the first time. I mean, we are in for a rough ride, because this is not the first time that they are seizing presidential plane in France. Their approach to these things are different. Talking about Utomi, I like the fact that he also did his own Me Too. And I hope other persons who have been abused, not only by Amosu, but by other governors, should also tell their story. It's not only governors. Institutions don't obey contracts. You do a job and a new leader will come, a new administrator will come, a new head of Parasata will come and say, "I didn't award the contract." But just like my friend already said, government is a continuum. If you inherited the assets and you're enjoying them, you should also inherit the liabilities. Simple. You don't go and choose only the assets and dump the liabilities. So we need to get to that point where we even get serious about enforcing our laws in this country and holding people accountable. That is actually the worst part. We don't just hold people accountable across the board. So we just pray that this person will be a good man, a good woman. But that's why we have laws. The laws are supposed to regulate our behavior, whether we are good or not, whether we want to be good or not. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Larry, it's interesting that you mentioned the police. Now, I'm throwing this question to Mr. Agaba, right? We have the police here. They were in Zongshan's statement of claim to the French court. It said members of its management team in Nigeria.
If you can hear us, you need to turn up your microphone. Your microphone is off, so we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, now we can hear
All
you.
right. Okay, so I was throwing this question to Agaba Wilson concerning this issue of the police, right? Zongshan, in its statement of claim to the French court, said members of its management team in Nigeria were physically harmed after being threatened. It alleged that the Ogun State government used the police to assault, threaten, and unlawfully detain its workers after the government revoked its export processing zone management contract. I mean, he went ahead to give details as to what exactly happened. He talked about draconian actions of Nigerian authorities, the secretary to the Ogun State government directly threatening their CEO to leave peacefully when there is an opportunity to do so and avoid forceful removal, complications, and possible prosecutions. I mean, he went ahead to give very, very detailed account of the policemen coming to beat him up, slapping him on the face, asking him for money, and all that. And these are issues that haven't been far from what we've heard about in the police, when you have an altercation with the police. But what's your 2 cents on it?
The problem is that just like we have both set forth from the beginning, the system is messed up. Over the years, we have refused to hold people accountable for their misdemeanors and misbehaviors, as well as gross misconduct. So, and you see, let me go back to the example of the traffic light he gave. Many times I'll be at the traffic waiting for the lights to turn red, green before we go, and you will see civil defense, police, immigration, army, all these paramilitary and all such agencies. They just drive past even when they have no need to be in a hurry. And you see, what happens is that most times once they just drive past, every other person follow them. Now, I want to bring this to what is happening here. When somebody does something bad and there are no consequences, others will be motivated to do it too. Now, over the time, we have been talking about police abusing their offices, abusing their uniform, doing what they are not supposed to do. And even when evidences are there, when they are captured on video, when people give vivid information and all of that, nothing happens to them. And so what do you think? It would appear that their bosses up there approve of it. So they continue to do these things. Not only these expatriates have they mistreated, you know how they mistreat Nigerians. Even those who are citizens here, they abuse you. They can just stop you on the road and begin to tell you anything they can, because the police have give them a lot of arms. They can actually accuse you for anything they want. If they feel that you are a criminal, they can just keep you. Whether or not there's any evidence to back it up, they don't care, because whether or not they do the right thing, nobody reprimands them, nobody gets fired, nobody gets convicted, nothing happens. And again, I want to bring this back to the level of training and the process of recruitment of the Nigerian police. I don't know what happens in the police college, but I do know that most of the time recruitment is based on connection. And when it is like that, you are bound to have the people who are not, some people who are not supposed to be in position, put in position. If not, these people are supposed to know that you cannot be ordered by a governor to go and do what will bring shame to your country. That your loyalty is to the Constitution, preserving the Constitution and protecting the interests of the general public. So if a governor or the chief of staff or a commissioner or whatever tells you to go and harass somebody, you are supposed to interpret to that person that the law does not allow us to use that instrumentation. The best thing to do, sir, is to go to court. If you think that you no longer want to do this, then the agreement you have signed before, look at the terms and conditions, fulfill it, and let the person go. But no, because they are always looking for their own small, thank you, sir, they will do whatever anybody in power tells them. There was a video trending some years ago, of a policeman carrying the handbag of the wife of a politician. That is not your job, sir. You are there to provide security, not to carry handbag. But he would willingly carry handbag because at least at the end of the day, madam will say, buy bread for your children. This is the reason we see our law enforcement agency get into this kind of mess. And when we hear this kind of thing, it's painful. We don't want to hear this kind of thing. We want to see decorum. If the politician is not well trained, a policeman at whatever level went to the police college, trained for at least 3 months, where all the ethics, the rules of this work, and their job, the importance and the significance of their job were taught to them. So this is what happens. And again, there are things we cannot begin to say on air, but we need to come up with a way of ensuring that we have people who are of good character and competence in leadership. Because if we have people of such character in leadership, we won't have this case degenerating like that. Because everybody knows that as long as this has to do with companies from other countries, it is an international issue. And it can degenerate to any level. The world is a global village. We are all interlaced. We are all interwoven. We are benefiting from one another in one way or the other. We have bilateral, unilateral, we have multilateral agreements everywhere. And one issue can affect the others. So it all boils down to the process of recruitment into everything in this country, both political recruitment and recruitment into this kind of security agencies. That is what has happened. Nobody talked about reading the contract. Nobody, in fact, it would seem as if at initio nobody even intended in keeping the terms of the contract. As much as we can do that in the country to our fellow citizens and get away with it, not every other country or companies from other countries want to leave it like that. And let me also make it put it to the public here. Most times, when you hear an issue between a company and maybe government or people here, you see a lot of our people say, "Oh, it is the man's business. He's the one making money." Like the issue of Dangote refinery and all of that came up. In Nigeria, we see it like that. But in developed countries, in saner climes, they see every enterprise as a property of the public. Why? Because this enterprise operates, they produce goods and services that are exported to other countries, which impacts on your balance of trade, which impacts on the strength of your currency, which impacts on the national image. Because they also operate, they create jobs, like a child. So you will not see China fold its hand while a state in Nigeria maltreats a corporation from China. You will never see that. When you hear international trade negotiation, how many business do you think the government itself participates in? The trade negotiation is always on behalf of private corporations. But because they actually are the fabric, the economic fabric of the country, they treat them well. So that we mess up our own enterprises in Nigeria, we should not expect that from China. China is going to go full force on us.
All right. Talking about this particular issue of the presidential jets being seized, right? Mr. Larry, the offices of the NSA and the AGF have already set in motion both legal and diplomatic steps to ensure the discharge of the inappropriate orders against the aircraft, which are covered by sovereign immunity. Now, you said we're in for a long ride, and you had also mentioned that this isn't the first time the French court is seizing a presidential jet. We know that of the DR Congo, but why do you think we're in for a long ride? We saw DR Congo's own. I think it lasted for a long. I think it lasted for a bit of a long ride as well. But should ours also take that long?
Well, whether it takes a long time or not depends on how they resolve it. If they pay the company, then naturally the matter will be resolved and everybody will go home. If they choose to explore legal or diplomatic means to resolve the problem without paying the company while retrieving the jet, then we are in for a long ride. Because when we talk about diplomatic immunity, the way French laws appear to interpret immunity is that if that particular asset, that's from what happened between them and the Democratic Republic of Congo, their leaning is that if the particular asset is not on a diplomatic mission at the time of the confiscation, then you may not be able to plead diplomatic immunity. So if, for instance, our plane takes our president to France to perform a diplomatic function, that court order wouldn't apply, because you cannot impound the plane and the president will be stranded. So they are thinking, from the analysis of the Democratic Republic of Congo case, is that if a plane, for instance, like we do in Nigeria, if our plane takes the son of a president to go and watch football or to go for a party, at that time, in their opinion, it's not carrying out a diplomatic function. So you shouldn't be covered by diplomatic immunity. That's their own interpretation. And in that case, pleading from your own perspective that there is no basis for confiscating the planes because they are diplomatic property, it doesn't hold water for them. So it's up to you now to persuade them through some other legal argument that their own court will permit and respect, to vacate the position, the judgment, so that you can take your planes. And that's why I said we are in for a long ride. And for me, it's not just about the money that we are owing and then the payment. I've raised one question. Nobody is talking to that question. The NSA said legal and diplomatic means. I know how my country works. Within the next 6 months, we may spend more than the money in question pursuing the money. I can assure you that if they open the books and honestly tell us about what they have already spent, because they had mediation and a large contingent, they didn't tell us the number of persons meanwhile, but a large contingent went for a negotiation on this matter. And I did some analysis. A large Nigerian contingent, they will get extra code. They will fly business class. Before you know what is happening, Nigeria will spend $100 million pursuing resolution of a debt of 74 million or 70 million. So the problem we have is that sometimes these people even seem to want these things to happen, because they say in Igbo language that when the land is desecrated, the elders benefit. You know, in those days when they sacrifice the chicken, then they have to roast it. Somebody eats the chicken, and the sacrifice comes because of the creation of the land. So when bad things happen, some lawyers are making money already. People are packing their bags to travel, and they are going to get allowances, extra codes. They are going to pad all kinds of. They are going to find nebulous legal advisors who live in France and Europe, who are experts in courts that will advise us. Before you know what is happening, I'm not joking, we will spend more money than what we are pursuing. So we should also open our eyes while we are going after the solution. The question should be, at what cost? We should do a cost-benefit analysis. If at the end of the day, we are going to waste resources, waste time, bring our nation to odium. Now, meanwhile, whichever way you look at it, something led to this. Remember that this is not the first issue. Properties have been seized in UK. So we are talking as if this happened in isolation. The fact that properties have been seized in UK means that more may be coming. When our properties were seized in UK, real estate asset. So what did they do? So the point I'm making is that we are not only in for a long ride, it's a very embarrassing situation. And while we try to deploy whatever solutions we may have in mind, we need to ask ourselves at what cost. And when we say cost, not only money cost, reputation cost, and several other costs as a nation. Because a lot of people will be thinking about us now. People will be talking about Nigeria, thinking about Nigeria, and you can imagine what they'll be saying.
All right, you can join the conversation 0808 312 8618. 0808 312 8618 is the number to call to be a part of this conversation so far. 0808 312 8618. 8 is the number to call. All right, Mr. Akaba, looking at this presidential jet situation, do you think it's enough lesson learned by the federal government, or do you think it would be enough to get the federal government to sort of impose a bit of touchlighting some of these deals that we're making through the state government?
Just like Mr. Larry mentioned, these things are not happening by error. In fact, if I want to say what's on my mind, I would think that they are orchestrated. Because there are people who benefit from these kind of things. And it goes to show that most times our leaders don't intend to do whatever it is they promise. Because imagine a government that prides itself in pursuing foreign direct investment. And then you have this kind of international miscommunication, if there's any word like that. The current president has been talking about bringing in foreign direct investment. Are you telling me that this issue of Ogun State, the federal government was not aware of it until this happened outside Nigeria? If they were aware, what did they do? And the fact that they did nothing about it until this asset seizure hit us, it means nobody is serious. We mentioned the issue of, scrutinizing this thing before they are done. So one can excuse the government because it did not happen under this administration. But just like Mr. Larry mentioned earlier, if you inherit the asset, you must also inherit the liabilities. So you should be able to pick up a handover note, read through them. And if issues like this pop up and you hear about it, you get to the bottom before it gets to you. But nobody did anything. The one in London happened. Well, we cannot begin to even talk about issues of contract like this that we have signed without looking. Have you forgotten the infamous P&ID case? Have you forgotten that? There are a lot of other issues that we have come our way. Have we learned from that? So we are never going to learn because we are not even interested in learning. Like I mentioned earlier, people are already packing their bags. They are already writing receipts. They are writing extra code. And some people are going to benefit from it. In fact, it's an avenue for them to even take money from the government coffer without accounting for it. If anybody was serious, they would have looked at this issue. What is the reputational damage for us? How can we resolve this issue? Even if the state government does not have, what can the federal government do to save face so that other investors will not be discouraged from coming in? So I don't think we learn, and I don't think we hope to learn, and I don't think our leaders are ready to learn. I don't think they even have the best interest of the country at heart, because this should not be happening. Look at the issue of the Dangote refinery, for instance. Look at how we have been treating our own. And we expect other people from other countries to bring their money into our country to come and establish their own business. Nobody wants to take that kind of risk. I really do hope that we can sit down, take a look at how far we have come as a country in the last over 5 decades, and then think of where we should be. It looks like while the rest of the world is moving forward, we are on a reverse gear. We are not going anywhere. When other countries are trying to colonize space, we are here still talking about local government autonomy. We are unable to account for the amount of oil drilled in our country. We are unable to even give account of our own budget. So it's becoming too much appalling. It is embarrassing. And I do hope that we reevaluate the recruitment processes for our leaders so that we can begin to have the best brain, mind, and characters in strategic places. Not everything should be political. I think we should rework our institution such that certain institutions are working parallel with the government. It is not everything we should have a president appointing people into such office or the governor appointing people. We should have institutions that are running parallel of politics. So that this kind of institution will only recruit the best brain and people will be held responsible when things go wrong.
All right, Mr. Larry, in wrapping up, right, we know that this incident happened over 3 years before the present administration came on board. And we've talked about how government is a continuum. So if heads should roll, who should be taken to the chopping block on this particular deal falling through and having such bad blood with a Chinese company?
Well, I think first of all, before we think about heads rolling in terms of people losing their jobs and all that, we should also think about people who may have behaved in a way that should be considered negligence or criminal negligence, or people who may have behaved in a way that deserves to be not only investigated but prosecuted and possibly punished. Because if you look at the contract and the procedures leading to the contract, and then also the process of terminating the contract, some persons may have acted in a manner that makes it obvious that they have personal interest that superseded national interest. We have a code of conduct for public officers in Nigeria. The code of conduct stipulates how public officers should behave, and there's a code of conduct tribunal. So we need to also ask ourselves before we even get to heads rolling, are there persons from the previous administration, including under Amosu's government and the federal government, who didn't do due diligence or who compromised their position for personal gain? Such persons deserve to be punished. But coming to heads rolling, we need to address another critical issue. Do we really prepare handover notes in Nigeria? Do the handover notes cover the critical aspects in detail enough for the incoming administration to know what has happened? The answer is no. We've had governors who actually said in the past that they didn't receive any handover notes at all. We've had ministers who prepared 5-page handover notes. So that is another issue we must address. We need to legislate on handover process in Nigeria. I don't want to digress and go into it, but we need to legislate and say this is the minimum standard for to another if you're in public office. Because if there was a proper handover and then the people in the new administration did not take any action, they were not proactive in solving the problem, then we begin to look at heads rolling.
All right.
And even if the matter was not mentioned in the handover, if the Chinese company reached out to them to say, we have this challenge, just like Pat Utomi reached out to the successor of Amos, and they didn't do anything, that's also enough reason for us to identify the heads that should roll.
All right.
So for me, it starts from holding people accountable based on the code of conduct for public officers, based on the economic sabotage laws, and then we'll come to the president and ask who didn't do his or her duty to prevent this embarrassment.
All right.
When we ask these questions, and then we can make progress.
Okay. Finally, we'll just get your wrapping words on this, Akapa Wilson. So let's get your final words on this issue.
Well, all I have to say is that this will continue to happen as long as we don't have the right people with the right mindset and orientation in strategic places. We need to have a national mechanism that has a working component that actually delivers the Nigerian dream, irrespective of who is in power. Then we can have the political components that sit in the driving seat. So it's more or less like, let's build a country that has an autopilot system so that the politician becomes like a pilot. He only has to function when the autopilot is not working. And this will insulate us from all the form of politicking and the corruption that politicization comes with, and the division and all of that. If we have institutions that are doing this thing independent of politicians, these things will not happen. We should look towards that. And we should look at our election processes. Our people should start listening to people who have ideas or how to change things instead of people who have 10 kobo to share to them, salt, onions, rice. And every of our problem is solved with rice. We should begin to look beyond our stomach. Otherwise, this will continue to happen because we will shout like this, we will make recommendation and all of that, but yet nothing will happen from any of the parliamentary tiers, not at the federal, not at the state. Nothing will change. It is up to us, the people now, to begin to ask the right question during election. Somebody said debates don't matter during election, but we can see now, when you have debate, people get to show you what is on their mind. We should begin to work to better our electoral system. I think that is where the whole thing starts from.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time this morning. Agaba Wilson Agaba and Mr. Larry Oguego. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, my pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
All right, to you listening, thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning. However, over the course of the weekend, guess who was whooped in a fight? Dricus du Plessis of South Africa defended his UFC middleweight title on Sunday after a fourth-round submission win over Israel Adesanya in a blockbuster bout at Perth Arena. Nonso Arinzechi, after all my baby's mouth, he was whooped at the arena on Sunday.
Yeah, we did watch the game, UFC 305, if I'm not mistaken. And if it was not for the choke, and the knockout, it would have been absolutely Adesanya's victory. I think he had the better of the exchanges. He was on top of the game, but this asks a lot of questions. I'm not one who would come out to say, I think there's a kind of hanky-panky in that game, and I will let you know why. The same, submission move was made earlier in the fight, and Adesanya pulled out of it. And in the same move again, when we see this in UFC, when we see this kind of sequence, we tend to ask, is there hanky-panky? Was there an agreement under the knife where, because don't forget, Adesanya was not fighting. He was called back just to get imagine you called back straight to a title fight. Was there an agreement, a gentleman agreement that, you will let me win at the championship stage, or we'll share the money? Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, there's always going to be an element of match fixing in this MMA stuff. But it is what it is. It's a win for Africa. Du Plessis, the South African, retains his title in the welterweight. But I still want to ask again. I'm watching that fight. I watching as a professional, I was like asking, if you watch the sequence closely.
You're a professional. Which of the professionals?
As a sport journalist,
okay.
that I've watched UFC over
because
and over and over
I thought you wanted to talk about fighting.
No, I'll do no such thing. Not today, not tomorrow, not any other day. But I still felt something. There was a little bit of maybe I'm getting too much. Maybe because of too much of fights in my head. I'm trying to point out what went wrong. But let's leave that aside. Kudos to Du Plessis. He remains the title champion. And you could see that after the fight, you could see all the bromance. You're like, where was the bad blood between these two guys?
Exactly.
All of a sudden, when you lose a fight and you have this bad blood, we see that in boxing where there's always wanted to have a rematch or something. There's this, you're a great guy, you're a great boxer, and then that going back to the fight again, and then I said, there might be something in there that maybe we didn't see, but kudos to both of them. I think they'll go home smiling. They'll be happy with each other, and then Du Plessis keeps his belt. It's as simple as that.
All right, Victor Osimhen is set to snub Chelsea and wait for Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know. They're now ready to make a final decision on his transfer. Yeah. I don't know how that will go, but what's your take?
It looks like he's in a dilemma. He's in deep waters. He was not in the squad for the Coppa Italia game. He was not in the squad yesterday when they were beating. They were walloped by Hellas Verona by 3-0, where the coach Antonio Conte had to come out to apologize to the fans for that abysmal performance. But still not Victor Osimhen in the side of things. The club wants him out as quickly as possible. First of all, to clear out their wage bill. Two, they feel he's good riddance. Too much disturbance in the squad, and you can't have two stubborn heads. Antonio Conte is a stubborn head already. Having Victor Osimhen there is like having two fighters. Exactly. So. It is what it is. Wait and see. We hear that Mikel is trying to liaise him to get to Chelsea. He still doesn't want that move. He wants to wait until Paris Saint-Germain come in, because there's one thing that Paris Saint-Germain gives that Chelsea can't give him, is ability to compete for titles, because Chelsea are not in a good place at the moment, and also Champions League football. And it will be a sad thing that the African best player is playing not in the Champions League. not in the Europa League, maybe Conference League football. So he wants to change that scenario. I want to play Champions League football. I think unfortunately this is the best time for him to have left. But unfortunately, it looks like every club right now who needs a striker are not looking his way. The only thing that needs a striker is Chelsea not playing Champions League football. Arsenal need a striker. They are calling the amount he's paying ridiculous. The amount to be paid 130 million euros. 130 million euros. So it is what it is, man. But I don't want
watch and see how all that plays out.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, did you see our performance, Man City versus Chelsea?
There was one reason I didn't want to come into the studio because I knew you would gloat. And but unfortunately, we all know how abysmal Chelsea has been throughout the preseason. You played them in the preseason. I think it was the 4-2 victory in the United States of America. And again, Haaland reigning supreme. Come on, the guy can't stop scoring goals.
He just can't.
Matthew Kovacic returning back to the bridge, finally cracked the bridge with his beautiful strike. But I think Chelsea were the acting of their error, of their failure yesterday. I think they made so many mistakes. They caused themselves so many problems. And typical Pep Guardiola, he's a stock in trade. He's exploiting the mistake made by teams. And voila, 3 points, 2 goals, clean sheet. What a way to start the defense of the title.
Exactly. What a way. No, so, all right, any more sports stories that we need to catch up on?
Come on, man. There are a lot of games played in the EPL. Arsenal were 2-0 winners over Wolverhampton Wanderers. Chelsea were beaten already, against Manchester City. Liverpool defeated Ipswich Town by 2 goals to Mohamed Salah, scoring 300 goal contribution over 330 games, becoming the highest number of goals in match they won with 9 goals. And Onslaught begins his campaign with a good note. For Raheem Sterling, talking about Chelsea, we hear his agent are finding out clarity what his future is like at Chelsea after he missed match day 1 of the season. Don't forget, he's played in 11 consecutive match day 1 games, but he missed out on this one. There were wins for Tottenham Hotspur will play on Leicester City tonight, Monday Night Football. That game is for 8 p.m. I can tell you for sure. Let's leave the EPL for a moment. In the Serie A, there were draws for Inter Milan, a 2-2 draw with Genoa, and for AC Milan, they also played a 2-2 draw with Torino. In the Spanish La Liga, Madrid played a 1-0 draw with Mallorca. Glenn Pape couldn't save them. And of course, Barcelona with 2 goals from Robert Lewandowski helped his team to a 2-1 victory away from home against Valencia at the Mestalla. In Italian Serie A, Napoli were 1-3 goals to nil as well. I told you that as well. And of course, which other league have I not touched so far? Of course, yes, I haven't touched the Bundesliga. There were wins for Dortmund 4-1 victors by Munich Spank Amps in the DFB Pokal Cup by 4 goals to nil. And by Leverkusen played a 2-2 draw, winning their game on penalties. Nigerian own Victor Boniface was on target in that encounter. Wait and see. A certain Ivan Toney as well was not in action for Brentford in their win yesterday. We hear that there are a lot of offers from the Saudi Pro League, Al Alil precisely. He was dropped, but their team was good enough to win by 2 goals to 1. Other games in the Premier League, Everton lost at home to 3 goals to nil to Brighton. We hear that Ashley Young became the oldest player to be red-carded in the Premier League. West Ham lost 1-2 at home to Aston Villa, and Newcastle, despite going a man down for Fabian Schär, won that game by a goal to nil. Jolinton with that goal as they beat Southampton, the newcomers, by a goal to nil in that encounter. Before we jumped out of Europe, quickly we touched down the Cincinnati Open. Sabalenka beats Igor Swiatek for the first time in the calendar year in the season in the Cincinnati Open to get herself into the Cincinnati Open final. She won that game 6-3, 6-3. First time she's winning her on straight set. She would face Jessica Pegula on Monday, who beat Paula Porosa, the Spanish, 6-2, 3-6, 6-3 in the other semi-final. In the men category, for Draper, he was beaten. Rune ended Draper's hope, winning that game by 6-2, 6-3, 6-2, 6-4, 6-2. And he will face Francis Tofiu in the final after Tofiu did the job, against Andrei Rublev. Yes, 4-6, 7-5, 6-4. So Yannick Sinner will be playing Rune in the final of the Cincinnati Open. Let's now come home quickly because of time. We have a new coach who will emerge this week. I'm talking about the technical director of the NFF, Austin Eguavon, the man who is up for this job is no other than Swedish man, yes, Jan Anderson, the 61-year-old, is the man reported to be the man to pick up the job of the Super Eagles of Nigeria as we prepare for the African Competition qualifier that will take place on the 7th of September at the Godswill Akpabio Stadium in Uyo. Colombia, our Falconets have flown away to Colombia, a 2-week training in Bogota in Colombia before the game begins proper. We hear they'll be training there to prepare themselves for that big game. Don't forget, Nigeria has got to the final twice, winning silver medals, and have been to the semi-final once. On the 17th Women's World Cup, there will be no Nigerian referee again. It seems our referees can't just get into FIFA's good books. Sad news we hear, Ola Aino would not be part of the Super Eagles team. He picked up an injury in his team 1-0 draw in the Premier League last time. He was replaced by Harry Tofolo in the 54th minute. He's got a calf injury. We know. Let's hope and pray he could be fit enough for the game. In the CAF Champions League, Rebel Stars were 2-1 winners against AS Alpha Super Eagles debutant. Sadiq Ismail was with the goal, helping them to a 2-1 victory. Enugu Rangers in the CAF Champions League as well were 1-0 victors over US Jumanji. And of course, for El Kremi Warriors, they played a 1-0 draw at the Ikene Stadium, coming from a goal down to score in the 90th minute through Ajiji Samuel to ensure that they played a 1-1 draw and take a 1-1 draw to Cotonou in Benin Republic. In the Women's CAF Champions League, we know that Edo Queens will battle Inter Abidjan in the semi-finals of that competition. Don't forget, only one team will get a ticket to the CAF Women's Champions League later this year. That I can confirm to you as well. Okay, in handball, we have a 18-man. We are going to play in the President Cup. We defeated Angola in the final game, the IHF World Championship. Winning that one 29-21. And of course, it's official, guys. 18-man list for the under 20 Athletics Championship has been released by the AFN, and we hear that, of course, 400-meter semi-finalists at the Olympic Games, Ella Ojonova, long jump finalist Pristina Ochonogo, and Youth Games 100-meter specialist Justina Eyapoyan and Israel Okon Sunday are among the 18-man list that represent Nigeria at the under 20 World Athletics Championship. I can go on and on. Shadi Bangida has begun his rehabilitation in the Netherlands. We heard that Ajax, his former club, is using the facility right there in Ajax to take care of that one. And I will stop here because I love our Nigerian players. But I just have to say this, man. Which Azubike Okechukwu will play in the second tier of the Turkish league. Erzurum Spor is the team. Here he will sign a 2-year deal. He struggled with Sheku Raspor due to injuries. And finally, Adema Lukman could be that man who could be heading to Paris Saint-Germain. We hear that Jonathan Sancho's deal to Paris Saint-Germain is too pricey. PSG has said the money is too much for Jonathan Sancho, and they have turned their attention to African best hopeful Adama Lukman, who plays for Atlanta. But we're yet to see whether Atlanta will let go of their priced asset. This is how much I can take, guys. But don't worry, 5 p.m. Sport Lounge, 5 to 6 p.m. we talk about everything that happened in the world of sport. This is where I can go back to Gesse, who will continue to gloat.
All right, so we'll be watching and seeing how Man City performs all through the game, all through the EPL, because I know that every jaws are out. All of you are just angry about Man City. Hopefully they'll, I don't know, they'll win.
We'll give them the Carabao Cup, and we won't give them the league. We're tired of them winning the league.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Others should do better. That's all I'm saying. Others should just strap up and do better. Anyway, that's pretty much it on the arena this morning. My name is Gesere.
And I am Nonso to your sport bishop.
Good morning.